Okay, so NOFA has asked us to do a few introductory slides. And this one is very important. We want to start with a land acknowledgement, right? So this is about acknowledging that we're on Nipmuc land here, that there have been multiple, tribal involvement in stewarding this land, and historic, and to recognize all the effects of colonization and the historical impacts of all that, but also the current situation with tribes that are organizing, that are working towards land back. As an example, Jill and I are from Global Village Farms, and we are in close communication with the Pocasset-Pokanoket Land Trust and the Nipmuc Land Trust, and are working on bringing 17 of our 52 acres into Indigenous Land Trust control, and the other 35 acres doing a cultural easement with a tribal entity. So that's a work in progress, and we hope to have those conversations continue throughout this conference. If you're somewhere else and would like to look up where your, what tribes are active in your area, there's a map here, native-land.ca, and it has a lot of great information for tribal, both state recognized, federally recognized, and other tribal entities and information. Thank you to, and racial equity, we want to center that in everything that happens here at the conference and in our organizations. One great way to do that is to connect with a local or regional racial justice group, Black-led group. Here's a good list of Black, Indigenous people of color-led organizations, and some resources. Thank you to the sponsors. Here are the partner sponsors. And here are the supporter sponsors. And one more announcement to please participate in the auction that's happening online. There's some great items there, and you can do it right at that website right there. There's probably QR codes around in the hallway, etc. And you can bid on things. So my name is Matt Feinstein. I'm with Global Village Farms, and I'm going to introduce first my coworker Jill Ferreira, who is going to be introducing a little bit of the work of Global Village, and then most of this workshop we have with Ujamaa Cooperative Farming Alliance guests that are.
Thank you all so much for coming out for this workshop today. My name is Jill. I've been working with Global Village Farms since June as the organizer. And yeah, Global Village Farms, or Global Village at Tuckaway Farms, is so many things. Grassroots organization, healing center, beekeeping cooperative, a farm, and a community located in Grafton, Mass, where Matt just described, is on Nipmuc land. And the mission is Indigenous sovereignty, healing, food access, and education. So please check us out on social media. You can see all of the endeavors and different workshops that are offered if you're curious. So today, for this workshop, we are honored to have Bonnetta and Nate. And according to the title, we will be discussing seeds, soil amendments, bed prep, buying the right materials, but also culturally meaningful growing and ancestral seed history and information, stressing the importance of building something new to expand to the population of people who grow seeds. So thank you again, and hand it over now.
And just quick announcement about some things that Global Village is up to. We have a co-op intensive that we run in the spring, so May or June. If you have a BIPOC-led land-based project and want in-depth retreat-style training, we offer that and there's a sign-up online, as you can see here. You can build your team and grow. And then in the fall, we have a broader online, mostly cohort program that is great for people interested in the cooperative model, but any land-based or food-based business is welcome to join that as well. So there's more information at globalvillagefarms.org. And now, for the rest of the time, we really want to pass it over to our co-founders of Ujamaa Cooperative Farming Alliance. Nate comes up from New Jersey, part of NOFA, New Jersey, and has been involved in lots of community organizing projects, including the Experimental Farm Network, which we'll hear a little bit about, and really, you know, is a workhorse behind all that this immense project that they have started, Ujamaa Cooperative Farming Alliance and Ujamaa Seeds. It's a new seed company that you'll be hearing about. So such a great to have Nate. And Bonnetta Adeeb is also co-founder of Ujamaa and is the founder and president of STEAM Onward, which is the anchor nonprofit behind Ujamaa Cooperative Farming Alliance, and comes with a whole history of great support of Black-led growing and organizing. So we're so excited to have you. Thanks for coming all the way up. Nina came all the way from Maryland. So the rest of the time is how you all would like to go. We do have some slides whenever we want to go into that, but yeah.
So, Bonnetta Adeeb here. Yes, thank you. So because our work is deeply anchored in our traditions, in our ancestors, and that work is carried very importantly in music and art and culture. It's the way we connect. I'd like to start with a minute of a little meditation that I've been doing as I'm going. I have a piece of music here. We'll just play a couple of minutes of it. But this is Ella Baker's song. It's a poem written by Ella Baker. And I really strongly believe that we're at the beginning of something that's a revolution. We are simply foot soldiers in a movement that has been going on for a really long time.
Sing it with me if you like.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest.
Hold her right, love it, and I know that the secret of my going on is in the razor in the hands of the young.
Run against the storm.
Cause to me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can shed some light, I may carry us through the gate.
We who believe in freedom, we cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. So that message is really clear for farmers because we don't get that much rest anyway, right? We don't need that much. So I'd like you to understand that the work as we're doing is about us, not so much, but about preserving a lost heritage. And so Ujamaa Seeds started with the belief that we could reclaim a heritage of seed saving and seed farming. And you know, we talk about the youngins there. This is who I'm talking about. People of courage who believe in miracles, who believe that things can get done. So this guy said, Bonnetta, we can do it. We can start a seed company. So we are a product of COVID. When COVID hit, all my farmer friends were telling me, Bonnetta, you're gonna watch it go down. The whole food distribution system is gonna head south. It's gonna crash and burn. And so we began to organize. I was working with high school kids at the time. They had started a business where they were selling seeds, starts, native trees, and nuts and berries, and everything came to a halt. So while we were crying because of the loss of something, I heard about Cooperative Gardens Commission. And so Nate and I met on the phone, on a Zoom. No, it wasn't Zoom. What was that other one? Maestro. And it turned out that he had been using some very important material from my dear cousin, Leah Pennyman, Soulfire Farm. It's also a connection I have with Matt. And I knew they were the real deal when they were using something that was, you know, was tried and true and honest, and were part of the struggle that we're trying to get to. So we started, I think we had about 2,000 volunteers from all over the country that helped us. We're in our 4th year now, and the goal is to get heirloom seeds in the hands of the people who need to learn to feed themselves. It was a really clear mission. We've accomplished so much. And so here we are, we set up a seed hub in Philadelphia. Seed companies donated hundreds of pounds of heirloom varieties that we could distribute to communities all over the country, tribal communities, poor communities, needy communities. But listen, everybody needs to eat, right? So anybody who needed seeds, we asked no questions except, can you get seeds to the people?
This is touchscreen.
It's a touchscreen. I apologize. I'm not used to fancy equipment like this. So we started doing that work. We had seed hubs all over the country. But we decided that we would teach kids how to help install farms based on the need that COVID came. So the kids started this whole pharmacy. It was Pharmacy Seed Company. That was the one they started. So we started out by having them work as a tiller corps to go out and install these gardens. And we decided to organize growers to teach the kids how to use this. From that organization, we realized that growers had many needs that were not being solved. Black growers and women growers in our region were really struggling. So we decided to start with a seed that was culturally meaningful. We started planting sorghum. And that development of a crop, doing a sorghum festival, which is really cool, led us to the place where we are today. And thanks to Co-op Gardens, we continue to distribute seeds to churches. We work with the health departments. Anybody who can get seeds in the hands of the people who want to take some responsibility for growing their own food and learn, because these things were stolen from us, but we can reclaim their heritage. We can learn how to take care of ourselves. And that's what we aim to do. So Nick, why don't you talk through this just a little bit?
Sure.
Excuse me, my breathing is not very good. I struggle with asthma. So I had to run for a plane yesterday and I'm still recovering from that.
All right, thank you, Bonnetta. Thanks for having us. So Bonnetta talked some about the beginning of the Ujamaa Cooperative, and we just wanted to give you a sense of who we are and how we come at this work. When we started the Cooperative Gardens Commission, that was, like we said, the purpose was getting seeds into people's hands and teaching people how to grow. But we came to the conclusion that so many of the seeds that we wanted to get, that people were requesting, were culturally important seeds that we just weren't getting donated from these seed companies. And when we looked at American seed companies, at the catalogs, so many of them weren't carrying culturally important seeds for so many communities that exist in this country, immigrant communities, long-standing communities, indigenous communities. And so we decided that we had to start growing seeds ourselves. And I run another nonprofit, Experimental Farm Network, which has a seed company side. And we've now been doing the seed company for this is our 6th year. And so having had that experience, I thought we can do this with all the people we have involved in Ujamaa. It'll be even easier than when we started Experimental Farm Network with just 2 people. But you know, the seed landscape in this country is very much a white industry. Most of the seed companies are run by white folks. Most of the farmers who grow their seeds are white folks, and yet the vast majority of the seeds that are being grown come from non-European peoples, whether it's tomatoes, which come from South America, or watermelons from Africa, or okra, or cowpeas, African peas, where we prefer to call them, potatoes from Peru. You know, so many of the things, the vast majority, really, there's really actually only a handful of food crops that are indigenous to Europe. There's plenty of heirloom varieties that we associate with Europe, but those are crops that are not originally from Europe. And yet it's European descended people who are making all the money selling these seeds. And you know, the Black people make up 12% of the population, maybe 14% of the population, but are only about 1% of farmers in this country. And farming is hard. It is really hard work, but seed farming, as difficult as it is one of the is actually one of the lower impact ways to farm. And as far as sustainability for the farmer, you can last a lot longer as a seed farmer, because if you're a market farmer or a CSA farmer, you know, you need to get beautiful vegetables to people every single day or every week. But seed farming is, you know, you need to get good, healthy seeds at the end of the year, and you don't have to worry about getting perfectly refrigerated cabbages to where they need to go when they need to go there. And yet that's been a part of the seed industry that's been has not been available to people of color for the most part. But we are going to talk about some of these main things that we said we would talk about here: seeds, soil amendments, bed prep, some of these fundamental questions for beginning folks. And some of this will lead into our talking more about our work. So this is not going.
So we started a conversation with the organic seed industry, and we asked straight up questions. Why aren't there any people of color in this sector? And they came back with silence. It was silent for a minute. But then after a while, they decided that they would support us and help us to build this organization that could respond to the lack of opportunity that was there. And so that's how we came to eventually move from seed farming, contract farming work, growing more BIPOC farmers, to the position of actually having our own seed company, where we were meeting the needs of growers for their specifically culturally meaningful varieties.
We're going to switch up and go back to this other computer. Okay, so we wanted to start with some relatively easy crops to grow from seed, just to put these out there. I know it's intimidating for a lot of folks, and of course, there's plenty of opportunity to buy plant starts at grocery stores from local co-ops or local farms, people who sell them on the side of the road. If you are just getting started gardening and you want to grow your own food, it is easier to start with starts than it is to start from seeds. But we are seed farmers, so we want to encourage people to start growing from seed. And there are some that are really quite easy, relatively speaking. Lettuce, beets, and chard, peas, beans, radishes, turnips, sunflowers, squash, okra, kale, collards, spinach, sorghum, which we're going to talk more about, and some of you probably never occurred to you to grow sorghum, or you might not even know what it is, and sweet corn. And then these pictures here are, the one on the right is a Syrian heirloom squash that's called a Homs kusa. Kusa is a type of squash, summer squash, and Homs is a city in Syria. That's a really fantastic squash. It's not like the modern zucchini, which usually grow on compact bush plants. This is a sprawling, vining beast of a plant. You plant it near a fence and you can be eating squash off of that fence for the next 2 months or longer, depending on disease pressure. And on the right, this is a bean called the Lofthouse Landrace dry bean Grex. And it is the guy named Joseph Lofthouse is a farmer in Utah, northern Utah, and he's been collecting all of these seeds. He grows them all together and sees what can survive in his high altitude, very, very cold climate in northern Utah, where sometimes he gets a freak frost in June or in August. And so the plants that can survive there are super resilient, and they tend to thrive all over the place. And this is sold as one single variety, even though there's clearly the genetics of dozens of different varieties in there. As far as bed preparation, that's getting the ground ready to put plants in it. Pretty much all you need to do is get rid of the weeds, get rid of the sod, the grass that's growing in your lawn or anywhere. You can achieve that by hand with something as simple as a rake and a hoe, or you can do it with something a little more heavy duty, like a rototiller, or in this case, a BCS, which is a walk behind tractor. I know it looks like a rototiller, but this is a super fancy piece of Italian-made equipment that has dozens of different attachments. It really is a tractor, but it's a small scale one, walk behind. They're pretty expensive, but I found one at an auction in South Jersey that all the farmers standing around had no idea what it was. They thought, oh, that's just a rototiller, and I got it for like $300. It's probably worth, 10 times that, yeah. This is actually my favorite tool on the farm. That's the wheel hoe, or the push plow. And it's got a simple blade and a wheel, and you cut your rows. So when I'm planting in the spring, some places I have beds that I don't even really need to do much to grow there anymore. I have cover crops that keep the weeds down through the winter, and then I'll just take the wheel hoe, cut a row through it, and then put my plant starts in. This was a flat of wheat, it looks like. And then, of course, if you have a tractor or access to a tractor and you want to go a little bigger scale, you can use that to turn the ground over.
I just want to say that the thing about seed farming is that you can get started with seed farming with a very small plot. You can start out with one crop and or a full range of things that you've already had success in growing, and then add that seed saving portion to your work. And so with an 1/8 acre, if that's all you can dedicate to seed farming, you can be a full-fledged seed farmer just with that amount of land devoted to seed farming.
So we figured we'd talk a little bit about seed starting, and it is when you are growing from seed, it's usually much easier to start them in a flat like this, in something plastic, rather than starting them directly in the ground. That's the case with many things. The things on that list of easy things, those you can often start directly in the ground. But seeds like tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, you're going to want to start those in a flat like this. And you're going to want to do that in a seed starting mix. Regular garden soil is not always good for starting these delicate seeds in because they're susceptible to different kinds of fungi. There's something called damping off where fungi attack the delicate little initial root of a baby plant and the things just die. So if you try to grow tomatoes and starting them in regular garden soil in a flat like this, and you're watering them every day, you think you're doing everything you're supposed to, and then they all just rot, that's your problem, is damping off. But if you use a seed starting mix, which is usually made from peat moss and perlite, which is those little white granules there, which are not styrofoam, it's actually a mined material. That's all natural. That helps it from getting too wet.
I think another thing is to consider that many of the crops we eat are long season crops. For you northern growers, it's really helpful for you to get a head start. So you can get a head start by wherever you grow, if you have a hoop house or whatever you have, and then you can get these in the field once the ground gets warm enough to receive them.
And I should mention what this one happens to show. This is not a crop that hardly anyone grows in the garden. These tiny little seedlings are for a plant called, in Latin, Plantago maritima, or sea plantain. You might be familiar with the weedy plant called plantain that grows all over. If you chew it up and put it on a mosquito bite, it stops the itch. That plant grows all over. That's actually a European plant. And the original indigenous name for that was white man's footprint, because it grows on disturbed ground. And it was a medicinal plant and an edible plant that people brought over from Europe, and wherever there were European settlements, that plant followed. So that white man's footprint stuck. But there is a native species of that same genus called Plantago maritima that grows on beaches. Here in New England, I collected seeds the last 2 summers on the coast of Maine, and that plant has thin, strappy leaves. It is succulent and it's salty, and it's just absolutely delicious because it grows on the beach there. So one of the things that my nonprofit is doing is we work on plant breeding projects, and we're working to domesticate perennial crops to help with climate change mitigation. Perennial crops capture carbon in the ground, and this one is a potential. I think it has real potential as a perennial crop, just requires more work. So this is the kind of thing that gardeners can do in their own garden. You know, you take a wild plant and put it in garden soil for the first time and see what it does. And that's the first step toward domestication. All the food crops that we eat were domesticated by someone over the last 10, 12,000 years. And yet there are hundreds of thousands of more edible species out there that just exist as wild plants. So it's my little pitch for plant breeding.
And mine for biodiversity.
So we're going to talk a little bit about soil health, cover crops. You might have heard of cover crops, but don't really know what that is. Cover crops are plants that you plant over the soil to enrich the soil, to prevent erosion, and to inhibit the growth of weeds. So there's a whole range of them, and you plant some in the spring, you plant some in the fall, plant some in the summer, and some of them are intended to die in the winter. Those are winter kill cover crops. Some of them are supposed to live through the winter and continue enriching the soil through the winter. But depending on your needs, that's going to depend on which crops you use. This is a list of some crops that are or can be used as cover crops.
And we've used these in urban gardens, urban farms, as a cover crop, but also as a way to help people learn to identify basic things that most people used to know. So if you grow these together in a mix and you sow them in a mix, And you ask people, go out there and get some collards out of that patch. You tell they're there. Can you find the spinach? Can you find the cabbage or crimson clover? It's easy when it jumps out at you. But it's a way for us to reclaim this knowledge that most growers used to have about basic foods. And they all are nitrogen fixing. They're good for the soil and they're good for the farmer. Allow us to eat in that area through the winter time.
Yeah, where Bonnetta lives and farms in Southern Maryland, a lot more of these crops will survive throughout the winter and you can continue eating them. Where I live, even in South Jersey, a little farther north, not as many of these survive the whole winter. And up here, it's even fewer are actually going to be food during the winter, but they're going to keep the soil healthy and enable you to grow more crops the next year. But there are some things even here. Certain collards and kales are plenty winter hardy this far north, and you can keep eating them over the winter.
And the tillage radish is delicious. And if you have very poor soil, it can loosen that soil all the way down 2 feet down. And so not only do you get something delicious, but you get something that worked that soil and develop it for you.
Yeah, tillage radish, daikon radish is a very similar type of radish. Sometimes they're also called oil seed radish. You can press an oil from the seed, though I don't know anybody who's doing that. And then this is just an example at where I farm in New Jersey. These are some of our beds that we filled with rye. We planted rows of rye as cover crop. This was pretty early in the winter, and it keeps growing, and by the spring we have rye plants this big, and you can harvest the rye if you have the equipment, or you want to flail it and eat your homegrown rye, or you can just turn it back into the soil, run over it with a lawnmower, and then rototiller and get that green material back into the soil.
Yeah, our dear sister Ira says that green manure is the best way to turn around poor soil. So within a couple of years, you can improve your soil greatly by simply dropping that right in the field, not taking it somewhere else to compost it, but letting it compost in the field.
And all of those things like those tillage radishes, they have such a long root and they are pulling minerals from deeper down. And then when you chop it up at the surface and put it back into the top few inches of soil, suddenly that becomes available nutrients for the crops that you grow in that land. This is another bed at my spot in Jersey, where this is one of our other winter crops that even here you could grow as a winter crop. We call this wild broccoli rabe, and it is actually a feral turnip from local Italian farmers from 100 years ago. They grew leaf turnip varieties that they would eat the sprouts as broccoli rabe, and these went wild, and now they live all over the area. You have them here. People often just refer to them as wild mustard. They don't realize that it's actually a turnip. Some of them make roots, some of them don't, but the leaves are edible and delicious. You can eat them all winter. I go out there on a 9-degree day and I'll snap a frozen leaf off and then go in and cook it. And this is our first green crop in the spring as well. We are eating when it starts to flower, sometimes it flowers through the snow, or it'll start flowering, we'll have a snowstorm, it doesn't bother the plant, and we just keep eating it. That's about 3 or 4 weeks before rhubarb and asparagus are just poking their way through the earth. So we put this slide up about choosing varieties, because this is whether you're growing from seed or growing from plant starts, choosing what varieties to grow is really important. We recommend that you use local and regional seed companies, especially ones that grow most or all of their seeds. Often you won't know where the seeds are coming from, but if you can communicate with these seed companies, they will tell you. And often you'll find that seeds are being grown in the Netherlands or in Poland or in China, and they're importing them because it's much cheaper to outsource that labor. growing seeds is not easy. Thank you. Looking at my nose there, everybody. So yeah, local and regional seed companies. Here in New England, you have a lot of seed companies, or you have a few important seed companies up in Maine, like Fedco and Johnny's. You have High Mowing in Vermont. There's Hudson Valley Seeds in upstate New York, and Fruition Seeds in central New York. I'm sure there's some others that I'm forgetting. Experimental Farm Network, mine is based in New Jersey. Philadelphia has True Love Seeds as well. And both True Love and EFN have growers all over the place, as do High Mowing and Fedco and Johnny's. Those bigger ones also import quite a large amount of their seeds from other places. They do a lot of work locally, but the economics of the business, they're getting seeds from other places too. So grow what you love. Anything that if there's a vegetable that you really love, even if you don't think you can grow it, try it. You never know. I know the farmers in the Catskills who are growing artichokes, where, people would say you can't grow artichokes in the mountains in the Northeast, but they do it. They grow enough to sell them at farmers markets, and they're delicious.
Another thing I suggest you do is talk to your elders. Talk to grandma, the older folks in your family, and find out what they used, what was culturally meaningful for them, and grow that thing in their honor. We are working to establish varieties that will grow in the Northeast. And so, for instance, the gandules, the pigeon pea, is one that's been adapted for the North. So as we do this work, and as you experiment around with growing your own seeds for your family, you can help develop varieties that could survive. There's always something left in the field. Let me just give you one example. We have growers in Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. Well, you remember like a month ago, they were hit with a snowstorm. They had 0-degree temperatures when it was 60 and 70 degrees here, and they lost so much. They thought they lost everything, but they did not. There were actually a few plants left. And so those were plants that could tolerate zero weather. So they were so excited when they went back a week later and they saw there was activity and there's life. So that's another way to decide what you're going to grow for seed, is what can survive through whatever trauma climate change puts on our crops.
And that's another thing that's really important, and why we are big evangelists for growing and saving your own seed, producing your own seed. Because as the climate is warming, as we are getting more and more extreme weather, our seeds are not ready for it because they are adapted for a different world. And if we don't grow and save these in different climates, then the seeds are not going to be, they're not going to work. Most of the seeds that are grown in this country are grown out in the Pacific Northwest. They have a very, very different climate out there. So if you're buying seeds that were grown in Oregon, there's a good chance they're not going to thrive here, or they're not going to thrive as well as locally grown seeds will. And, seeds that were grown in South Carolina 50 years ago, or bred for South Carolina 50 years ago, are the seeds that I should be growing in New Jersey now. And the seeds that were developed for New Jersey 50 years ago are the seeds that y'all should be growing here, because that's how the climate's been shifting and it's accelerating. So we need our seeds to catch up, and the only way to do that is to grow them and save them. I also said, don't be afraid to try new things. That's that's a general rule for life, but also for seeds. Number 3, you always see seeds are good for what USDA zone. People kind of focus on this USDA zone map, but for annual crops, it doesn't matter at all, because zone has to do with the average winter low temperature. And so, as my mom used to say, what does that have to do with the price of onions in Korea? This is, if you're growing peas, it doesn't matter how low the temperature gets in the winter, you're going to plant them in March and or in April. If you're going to grow a tomato, what matters is days to maturity. And most seed companies will tell you how many days to maturity a certain crop needs. But also, you know, even if it says 120 days and you think you only have 110 reliable days, try it anyway, because the climate is changing and you're liable to have a longer season than you thought, at least some years.
And please consider those season extensions. So there's winter sow for some, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a way to get your spring stuff started in December. And they're already hardened off, they're strong, they're mighty, they can take the weather because they came up and they flourished on their own as plants with their own intelligence come. Also at the end of the season, you can put row covers on. There's many things you can do to try to extend the season, both at the beginning and at the end of the year.
The classic old cold frame is a wonderful way to do that. You get an old window, somebody's thrown away 5 windows on the side of the road, steal those things, put them over your garden box, and suddenly you have an extra month or 2 to grow lettuce or spinach or chard or beets or any of those crops. And you know, you're creating a miniature greenhouse. You don't need to build a massive greenhouse to create a greenhouse effect. So then the last thing I want to say, and again, this goes back to the breeding point, is to consider breeding variety, to consider growing varieties that are not uniform, improved varieties. These are things that, you know, it wasn't really easy to get these from seed companies until pretty recently, but there's quite a few outfits that are offering these, including Ujamaa, Experimental Farm Network, Adaptive Seeds out in Oregon, Wild Garden Seeds also in Oregon, and a lot of these things are absolutely beautiful. I have a few slides here. This is a landrace squash. A landrace, by the way, is a term that we throw around a lot. A landrace is a traditional variety that has not been improved by modern crop improvement. Basically, traditional communities would grow a crop. They would share the seeds among themselves, among their neighbors. Maybe people in one valley are growing one variety of squash, and in the next valley over, they're all growing a slightly different variety. And the next one over, they're growing a slightly different variety. But each of those valleys has a reservoir of biodiversity that is critical for food security in the long run. And all of the modern varieties, anything that you see out there as an heirloom, that is an inbred variety that someone selectively improved to create something uniform that will be predictable year after year. But with that predictability also comes susceptibility to pests and diseases. It's a genetic bottleneck. So there are these, you know, I'm not opposed to growing heirloom varieties, and I love many heirloom varieties, but those things are in some ways, they are evolutionary dead ends, especially with what we face with climate change. The Nanticoke people of Eastern Shore of Maryland, Southern Delaware, South Jersey, who developed this squash, they were not looking for uniformity. They were looking for resilience, for subsistence, food that would help them survive through the winter. And so having a massive diversity like this was really beneficial. These red ones always rot first, but they were still part of the population for some reason. They had some reason why they liked them. I'm sure they ate them first. And these gray ones, pink ones, those things can last for a year and a half, 2 years. Actually, in fact, this is a good segue. So this squash here that I brought as a little demo, this is actually a Syrian variety from Raqqa, which was the city in the headlines over the last decade because it was the headquarters of the Islamic State in Syria. You might notice that it looks similar to some of the ones in this picture. The Nanticoke squash was, like I said, grown in the Chesapeake Bay, Delaware Bay regions. And those were centers for global trade in the 1700s, when all trade was happening by ship around the world. A squash like this, this squash here, I planted this. I actually didn't plant this. This was a product of seeds that fell into my yard when I was cleaning the squash seeds 2 summers ago. And it grew up. So this was the summer of 2021. It grew up on its own out of the grass in my little backyard, and it produced 1 single fruit. I had grown this intentionally in fields a couple of times, and every time I grew it, they were always gray, and this was gray too when I harvested it. And they would rot in the fields in the peak of the summer, and I would have to scrape the seeds out of a pile of muck. This one, like I said, popped up on its own probably in early July, which is 2 months after I would have planted it. But like Bonnetta said, that's plant intelligence for you. This plant knew when it was supposed to grow, and this fruit ripened just before frost. 1 fruit right on the grass. I picked it, I put it on my counter, and I thought, okay, it looked good. It didn't have any signs of rot. I said, I'll see how long this one lasts. Like I said, all the others melted in the field. This one is like 18 months going strong. So I brought it here. I brought it here with the intention of opening it up. And yesterday I dropped it on the floor, and so it got a little crack. And we're gonna see what's inside. I don't want to
This
bust.
squash saved itself for y'all. Maybe we should name it after you.
So for the camera, this squash has beautiful white seeds like that. And that first one I grabbed was hollow, but that is a perfectly good seed. Can you see it? And yeah, I did not know what to expect because I have never seen a really good ripe one of these squash because they all rotted, but kind of looks like spaghetti squash. It smells good. It's got like a melony.
It's yummy already.
Melony
I haven't even
flavor.
added any spices to it.
So yeah, we'll see how many seeds there are and folks can grab some. But I had sort of given up on that raka variety. We put it in the catalog once. We figured people would it would go out there, and maybe some people would do better with it. But then this one popped up, and suddenly I'm a lot more interested in this variety. And in particular, I'm interested in the seeds from that squash because that one has genetics that I really want. This is a smart plant. It's adapted for my backyard in South Jersey, and we'll see what happens. I'm going to keep growing those seeds. I'll grow out a batch this year, see how they do, and I'll plant them a lot later. Clearly, they don't like the hot, humid summer. Is not when this squash wants to ripen. It wants to ripen in the cool shoulder season in the fall.
And that kind of sums up the work that we're doing in terms of reclaiming our heritage. It means count on the intelligence that's in that plant. So we'll talk a little later about some strategies that we are developing to help people learn how to think and look and study and make selections using those kinds of strategies.
This is another breeding project that we have ongoing. This has been our best-selling seed at Experimental Farm Network for the last 4 years. We call it, the breeder calls it Homesteader's Kaleidoscopic Perennial Kale Grex. Has about the longest name for a seed you can imagine, and we tried to tell them, nobody's gonna want to buy something with such a long name, but we were completely wrong. Everybody wants to buy it. And it is as described, it is a perennial kale. The plants, they grow, they become a small bush in some cases. Some of them have much skinnier leaves than the ones in these pictures. The pink doesn't usually develop until after frost, and only in a few of them. But perennial kale used to be very common. A lot of the ancestors of cabbage, which kale is a type of cabbage, came from the Mediterranean, and they grew as perennial shrubs along the coast. People bred out those perennial traits because they wanted something more standard. And overall, as agriculture developed, annual plants were easier to breed. It's sort of, it's a simple concept. You get a new generation every year. So you can adapt year after year. If you're growing a perennial plant like an apple or a strawberry or all sorts of other perennials, those things take often a few years to mature. So a single generation, in order to get 2, 3, 4 generations, you might be talking 12, 15, 18 years. And so we haven't developed as many perennials. But now with climate change and the need for an agricultural system that sequesters carbon in the ground rather than releasing it into the atmosphere, which happens every time you till the soil, we need more and more people breeding perennial crops. So, which is why we're working on perennial grains like sorghum, perennial wheat, and things like that, and perennial kale.
And this one is of particular interest to me because it's pink and purple. Okay, so I have been looking for pink and purple because I know I have a market for pink and purple vegetables. It's also very close to a collard, and I can tell somebody there's almost no difference between this and a collard. So everybody's looking for something to beautify their garden. So when you plant something like this, you're getting a gorgeous plant in addition to a delicious perennial vegetable that will keep on giving. So I got excited about this because I know a little girl would be interested in planting this and maybe serving this to her Barbies. So, because it's all about understanding our audience and meeting the need, but also selling farming. This is how we sell it, by making it relevant. Relevancy is everything when it comes to seed farming.
And also, perennials are easier. You don't have to plant them every year. You don't have to do all that work. They're going to just keep coming back. You do it once. This one in particular is very experimental still. There's a huge amount of diversity. So this is the time to get people, because this diversity is out there. We have an amazing plant breeder out in Washington State who has a huge field of the stuff. And he's got the most diverse, he's collected the most diverse genetics of perennial kale, collard type plants that anyone ever has. And so this collection, some of these would survive the winter here. If you plant 100 plants, maybe only 20 of them will survive a winter. You have a really rough winter, maybe only 3 or 4. But then if you save the seeds that grow off of that the next year, you're going to develop something that's even more cold hardy. It might die down to the stem might die completely, but the roots might live. And in the spring, you see fresh growth coming from the roots. I've seen these growing in Detroit survive the winter there. And I know that people have had them survive the winter in Maine. So here in Massachusetts, some of these will work. This is another population that we sell. It's called perpetual peace, with a little hyphen in the word peace. You can see it's got a mix of snap peas and snow peas, purple ones and green ones. And again, that diversity is the strength of this variety. And I included this because this is a wonderful native perennial plant. Anyone recognize these? Plums, specifically, these are beach plums, which is, if you've ever spent any time on the Cape, beach plums are a local product there. You can buy beach plum jam, and people are mostly harvesting those beach plums out of the sand dunes. This is a native plant that grows in dunes and produces an abundance of fruit every year. The Connecticut State Experimental Station has a huge planting of these that were planted for experimental purposes as a crop. Rutgers in New Jersey is still working actively to breed beach plum varieties that are more productive, that produce annually. A lot of the wild ones will take a year or 2 off every so often. Something that produces beautiful purple, red, and golden fruit is not only incredibly marketable, it's incredibly nutritious. You're getting a different suite of phytochemicals from each one. And this is something that I'm growing on my farm in South Jersey, which is, an hour from the beach. They grow fine in garden soil. And if we're not if each one of the seeds inside of each of these fruits has a unique combination of genes. So if we're just eating these and throwing the pits away, we're losing the potential from each of those you know, wondrous singular creations right there.
And we're throwing away our ancestors. We should not do that. This is what we're
Absolutely.
made of. Remember, you are what you eat.
And they're also delicious, and they make wine and vinegar, and I love beach plums.
So,
Want to talk about this one?
Yeah, let's talk about how we're kind of reclaiming this tradition. And so, you know, Nate kind of gave you a big overview of how the seed world focuses on heirloom, and we do. We focus in on heirloom because they will reproduce to look like granny. So you get multiple generations of something that is the same thing that tastes like the one that grandma had in those pots on the stove. That's important. But the problem we have is the climate is rapidly changing, and we really need to come up with something, a way for us to reclaim more biodiversity. And so we have two projects. One is called the Heirloom Collard Project. I'll talk about that in a minute. And from the Heirloom Collard Project, we started out with 21 varieties of collard that were allowed to intercross in a field. And what you get is really quite beautiful. And then in addition to that, there was another ultracross that was done with okra. This has 85 different mothers, I call them, different types of plants that come in a package that we sell. So the purpose of these, we thought originally, was to teach people how to observe for characteristics they needed to understand in seed breeding. So, you know, these okra flowers are really beautiful and are delicious to eat. Some people eat squash flowers. You can eat them in the same way. They have different shapes. They're different colors. They're amazing. So we started out with about 200 varieties of okra. It's also relevant because it's the African variety. It's an African seed that came, you know, with Africans, and it's a gift to our American heritage, particularly our Southern heritage. I haven't met too many people did like gumbo, though, right? Does everybody like gumbo? Can we agree that gumbo is delicious, right? We want y'all to eat more raw okra as well. So the concept is a stewardship model. And so what we ask growers to do is to take one of these varieties and grow them out to expand the number of seeds that we have left in that pool. So we have stewards. Yeah, we call them singletons. So if you decide that you want to be the steward of one of these varieties, we ask you to keep it in isolation, you to observe it, to plant it, you know, at recommended times, and to make these observations, keep data on that, and then send us the seed at the end of the year if you were successfully able to grow a crop. So for okra in your region, that's gonna take a little bit of planning, but it's perfectly doable. People in Boston are growing okra in their backyards right now. It can be done. Do you have a slide for the
I do.
collard?
Let me talk a little
Okay,
bit more
go ahead.
about this though first. So those 85 varieties, when we say there's 85 varieties in one packet, when we sell these ultra cross okra seeds, those 85 were actually all grown in the same field. About 30% of the seeds that come out of that population are the result of a cross between at least two of those 85 varieties. So when you plant a packet of ultra cross, you're not just going to see 85 different types. You know, you might see 500 types if you have you know, a couple thousand seeds, and that's how new varieties are going to get formed. That's called in botanical speak, plant breeding speak, that would be called a composite cross, and that's how a lot of classic old varieties were developed. People, a lot of the most important wheat varieties that we have came from a composite cross of hundreds of different wheat varieties all grown together, and then they plant them out in a field and select the ones that have the unique combination of traits that they need, whether it's particular disease resistance or yield, productivity, things like that.
Or in my case, what color is it? Is it pink? Is
Right.
it purple?
How's it
Is it
taste?
red? Is it tender?
And these are really cool. I wanted to talk specifically about the one on the top left of this, which we're not even sure if it would be botanically classed as the same species of okra. That's a variety called La Hague. It comes from Burkina Faso. And that green one, actually, we thought that was the type variety of it, but in doing a little more research, the original was actually red. And there are, if you plant the seeds from that one, you're liable to get a few red plants come out of it. I did a whole grow out last year of that La Hague variety that I got from Chris Smith, who is the brains behind this ultra cross okra, literally wrote the book on okra called The Whole Okra. He's from down in Asheville. He's a white British guy, but he's the okra guru.
And a real scholar on African varieties. I'll talk about him in just a minute.
And a sweet, sweet man as well.
Yeah. One of my nephews, another one.
So this La Hague okra, the plants are like contorted, and some of them have these ribs like that. Some of them are red. Some of them are longer, a little more intermediate in between the two. Some of the plants grow upright, and some of them are practically prostrate on the ground. But one thing they have in common, based on the USDA studies, is that they have among the highest oil content in the seeds. This thing gets woody really fast, and the pods don't get really big. So it probably was not bred in Burkina Faso as a vegetable crop. It was probably bred as an oilseed crop. And okra, there's actually some people trying to rebrand okra as Southern olive oil, because you can press the seeds and get a delicious culinary oil, high heat, high smoke point for frying, and really delicious. And this one the flavor is like a little different from regular okra. So we might be able to be developing a whole new oilseed crop from here that's much more sustainable. We don't have to import from another place. We don't have to use a ton of water like we do with almonds out in California. This is something that, while it's from Africa, is incredibly well adapted to the Southeast. And if you plant something like this ultra cross with 85 different parent lines, you're going to be able to get plants that grow really good okra here or up in Maine. I have friends growing it in Maine, and they planted a bunch of it, and they said, yeah, we got about 10-20% of it did okay. And they're going to save those seeds. And then eventually in 5 years, they're going to have a Maine adapted okra, which would have been unheard of 20-25 years ago.
But it's also pretty cool that another name of it is dinosaur okra. And I have a 4-year-old grandson who is everything dinosaur. So
we gave it that name. I don't think they gave that.
So we're calling it dinosaur okra. And it is a special crop that we will be growing with preschoolers this year, starting with my grandson, Kai. He will have a dinosaur okra to share at a show and tell in his preschool class.
And so this is the ultra cross collards, which again was from 21 original parent lines with names like
Tabitha Dykes.
Yeah, Old Timey Blue, Tabitha
William
Dykes,
Alexander,
Georgia
William
Southern.
Moore.
These are collards that were mostly individual family heirlooms passed down within one family. You want to talk about how that all came about?
So it's really cool. What happened is some scientists, some plant derm specialists decided to collect varieties of, he was actually a collard guy. He decided to collect varieties in North and South Carolina in some southern states. And he knew that people were growing these out. So he got a grant. He took a historian along with him, and they went door to door in North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama. When they would see somebody growing a beautiful patch of collard, they would, go knock on the door. Hello, I see you're growing gorgeous collard out there. Could you tell me a little bit about it? So they were able to talk these collard stewards, as we call them, into sharing some seeds. And the thing about these seed keepers that was so interesting is that most of them were in their 70s and 80s. And that's why they have people's names. They were named largely after the people, the families that bred them. And the sad part was that most of them did not have anybody in their family that was interested in continuing to steward these varieties. So because they gave them to our heirloom collard group, we were able to save almost 100 varieties of collard that were stewarded by families. So what happened to those 100 varieties? Well, they went to Grin and lived in Grin, where they were going to die a death of forgetfulness. And what we were able to do, our dear friend Ira heard about this project, and we were able to rescue those with the help of seed savers and create what's called the heirloom collard project. You can Google it. It's amazing. And we've started growing out these using the same methodology that we talked about with okra, which is growing and protecting the individual varieties. You know, one sorority in Winston-Salem grew out William Moore because we knew that that was a local Black a gardener, and they grew it out. And they weren't even gardeners, but they wanted to save that variety. So what we have done is now we have this ultra cross. We're in the 3rd generation of it, and it's amazing. It's also one of the major tools we use to bring people back into seed saving. And so, I'm going to talk more about that. Or you're going to go?
I was going to do an aside about GRIN.
GRIN. Let's talk about GRIN. Okay.
So GRIN stands for Germplasm Resources Information Network, and that's shorthand in plant breeding world for the USDA collections, also called the National Plant Germplasm System, NPGS. And the sorry for the translators about this. Germplasm is any propagative plant material. Seeds are germplasm, bulbs, scion wood for grafting, root cuttings, tissue cultured clones, anything that you can use to create a new plant is called germplasm. And our government has been saving seeds and other germplasm for 120 plus years. In a massive system across the country, there are multiple research stations that preserve these. Usually they're collaborative stations with a local land-grant university. Corvallis, Oregon State University has the National Clonal Plant Germplasm Repository, where they maintain hops for brewing beer. They maintain raspberries and strawberries and chestnuts, blueberries, and a whole range of plants we've never even heard of, Arctic kiwis and things like that. In Geneva, New York,
and turmeric and ginger.
Yeah, blue turmeric and all really amazing things. Geneva, New York has the apple and pear and cherry collection. Ames, Iowa has many of the small grains. Griffin, Georgia has many of the more warm season grains like the sorghum. And anyway, it's all over the place, but there are hundreds of thousands of these things. And all the government is doing is maintaining them. They might grow them every 20 years and keep the seeds frozen in the meantime. And so they're not really adapting to this changing world, which is why we try to get these seeds out of the government collection into people's hands. And that's been a big part of what Experimental Farm Network has done. It's now part of what Ujamaa is doing. And almost all of these okra varieties, those 85 okra varieties, the Lahague that I talked about, we only have access to those because of the US government system. And in many cases, the communities from which those crops came no longer exist in those places. Another part of what we do is work to return these seeds, rematriate these seeds. We say rematriate instead of repatriate in order to honor the fact that women have historically been the keepers of seeds in traditional farming societies. And so it's a really important part of our work to return these seeds to the communities from which they came, starting right in our own backyards. That Nanticoke squash landrace that I started with, I got those seeds from the Seed Savers Exchange vault in Iowa. And, I knew that there were indigenous people in my area, Nanticoke people. I had never met any Nanticoke people that I knew of. But when I had the when I had these seeds, I realized, oh, these should be going back to these folks. And so it was a multi-year effort to build relationships and build trust. But now, there are now Nanticoke people once again growing their squash. And we've managed to do the same with that Holmes squash from Syria. We returned that through an aid worker who I met, actually, who's from Connecticut. She brought them to Lebanon, to a refugee camp where there were Syrian refugees who had thought they would never see their traditional foods again, and then suddenly they were growing that. And the same thing can happen with these collards. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the folks who, when did they do that collecting, in the 80s?
Yes, in the 80s.
So, there may be a grandchild of one of these people who is now getting back into farming, but lost the seeds and has no idea that these seeds are sitting in a government seed bank or sitting in Bonita's basement. And until we, do the research and match those up, they might never get them back.
But we're hunting them down because in partnership with Princeton and Spelman University in Ujamaa, we have a project to find growers. We're looking for 250 seed stories. And our goal is to create a repository of important stories. And our interns are going to be tracking down some of these folks to see. We believe that many of them have passed, but maybe we can find some other people. And this is one of the techniques we use to help everybody learn to farm again, seed farm. It's relevant, farming what's important and meaningful to you. Preserving something that is a legacy for future generations. None of us would be here without the work of seed savers from 5,000 years ago that have got us to this day. So we're hoping that you may consider becoming a seed saver. So let me do a couple of little activities I'd like to do with you. We have been talking at you, so it's time for you to talk to each other. So I'm looking at the. Okay, we're gonna talk about sorghum. You want to talk about sorghum now?
You want to do it first?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's do
All right,
sorghum, and then we're gonna do a
we've
little
said
work
it
with
so
you.
many times, we'll just blast through it real quick. So sorghum is one of our favorite crops. It's the first crop that Ujamaa did. I think sorgo is the Spanish word for it. This is a variety from Kenya called Liboiwa. Sorghum can be popped like popcorn. It is a gluten-free grain. You can press the stalks of many varieties and squeeze juice out to make this green juice, which can be boiled down to make molasses. This is a variety of different sorghums. Most of these are from Africa. There's one from India that's a popping sorghum. The one in the middle, the black one, is an experimental perennial sorghum. That is from a cross between a wild weed called Johnson grass and more domesticated sorghum from Africa. This is one of the early crosses there. And this is the first plant that I had survive a winter in New Jersey, a sorghum plant. So this is an African native plant, and we had one plant survive one winter in New Jersey. But of course, and it looked like this the second year, became real bushy. It made a bunch of different heads. And so we saved all those seeds, planted out those seeds, and the next winter we had 4 of them survive the winter. So slowly but surely, we're going to develop a cold hardy, temperate, perennial sorghum, which we can use on a massive scale to replace things like genetically modified corn that we grow on tens of millions of acres across this country at great environmental detriment to the planet. So, and the other thing, sorghum is gluten-free, and so this is something you can make biscuits, cookies, bread, all sorts of things from, and we just love it.
And another thing that appeals to kids, because it's a nutritious, delicious sweet. It makes wonderful soda. You can make, of course, syrup and molasses from it. You can make cereal from it. It's a major grain cereal. So what happened?
Yeah, I was just going to show. We'll pass them around. But the other thing that's so great about sorghum, like I mentioned, flailing wheat. Wheat, if you're growing wheat, it's a more of a process. If you grow sorghum, the plant looks like corn. You lop the head off at the end of the season. It looks like this. You put it in a bucket and you go like this, and the seeds come right off. And then you can just winnow them clean by taking a handful like this. I'm gonna make a mess here. And you know, you pass it between your hands, blow on it a little bit, and then suddenly you have nice, clean, perfectly edible grain. You can also float off the chaff.
He separated the plant from the chaff.
And that's,
The
you know,
Bible
that's now edible. And this is a staple crop that people can grow in their own backyard on a backyard scale and create, you know, dozens of pounds of food to keep you and your family alive through the winter.
So if you're gonna grow a grain, this is an easy one to start with. We grew it with high school kids. Trust me, y'all can grow it. You can grow just a small patch and make your own syrup, your own cereal. What
There's
happens?
thousands of
An
varieties.
interesting thing happened. Well, we have several growers that are scientists, and one is the director of human nutrition. And she
At
was
the USDA.
at USDA. And so she was feeling that they had seen some things happen during COVID. They realized that many people had not had access to the vaccine, particularly people in Africa that had the lowest amount of vaccine availability, but the lowest number of people infected with COVID. And so it was interesting to watch these scientists say, well, maybe we need to figure out what those people are doing, because they know something that we don't know. They observed something they called the fortified food, which was a combination of food that people were eating together that strengthened the body. So actually they came to us, and they are now partners working with us on perennial crops. And sorghum is the first crop. It's called the great millet. And this is the year of the great millet, of millet. So now United Nations and many organizations, I'm sure it was everything that we said, right? We convinced them to do sorghum. But we believe that this is a crop in the future. It'll be important to us. You can make milk from it. You can make bread. It's just multi-useful.
And it takes 1/6 on average of the water to grow a corn crop, to grow sorghum. This is an arid land crop. It needs far less nutrition. You know, we never fertilize our sorghum crop, and you know, you can see
Even the upkeep of it, if you just run the row, you know, it can outpace most weeds. It's just a really great plant. So,
and this one's from South Sudan, which is one of the a place in the world that is really struggling with war and famine, and they have lost many of their traditional varieties because of that. But they are in the government collection. These will grow 10, 12, 15 feet tall. Sorghum is actually it's the fourth most widely grown grain in this country already. Most of it is grown for animal feed, and we grow dwarf varieties that are easy to combine. But these African varieties are 15 feet tall, and this is a dual use crop. You can get not only the grain, but you can get the cane, from the sweet juice from the cane. And also in places like South Sudan, like India, where they've been growing sorghum for a long time, they've realized that they can actually eat it like a vegetable as well. If you harvest the grains when they're still green, put it in a pillowcase and whack it with a broom handle, those green grains will fall off, and then you can steam them, add butter, and,
like a rice.
and
Well, thank you.
it's delicious.
Thanks so much. We definitely need a whole sorghum workshop for sure. But we want to leave a couple minutes for questions.
Absolutely.
Could we answer any questions for you?
Maybe we'll take like 2 or 3 together, since we only have 2 minutes, and then this will be addressed.
I was gonna say, I use that bird seed now, sorghum.
Yes.
And I find that growing, my God.
Yep, you'll see it from birds at the bottom of bird feeders. I have some in my front yard because my brother's girlfriend put a little little bird feeder out.
And folks online should feel free to chime in with questions. Raise your hand or just come up here.
There, you may also be familiar with sorghum as broom corn. You'll see varieties out there that have grains that are usually much harder to thresh by hand, but they would be stripped off of it because the grains aren't what people are going for. Strip the grains, feed them to the pigs, but then the stalk itself with the individual filaments, you bundle a bunch of them together, and that's what that's what old school brooms were and still are made of. You can still find companies manufacturing brooms made from sorghum.
I didn't mention that this is a top value added product. Look at all the different good stuff you can get off this. I say, I won't talk anymore about sorghum, but what is your question? I'm in love with sorghum, okay? Any more questions?
We said so much, nobody has any questions.
Well, I did want to give you a minute to talk. We did have another question? Yes.
How would you convince a person to like grow multi-class other than just trying to prepare for with global warming? Why would that person like have something that this could look like this, like that?
Because it's fun.
And I know.
That's pretty much all we need to do.
But it's another revenue stream for growers. It's actually multiple revenue streams. So you can sell that seed as a contract grower. You can also sell the byproducts you make from it as value added. And then you can also ensure that your family has a storage crop. Who knows what's coming at us? So I think there's multiple reasons to grow at their markets for these things. And you also can learn the business of seed saving through taking on one or two of these varieties. And we suggest, we start growers with the two we just showed you, which is the okra, which you would plant as a summer crop, and the collard, which you would grow as a winter crop. And then sorghum, would be, a storage crop that you could work on and learn more about as well.
The ultra process, you would, if I bought a packet of seeds, I would just plant some and to eat or to grow. If I bought the ultra process, am I trying to grow seed or am I trying to grow food?
You can grow both. That's the great thing about these plants produce in such abundance. You can grow a collard crop and eat leaves all year. Collard is a biennial.
Sell leaves all year.
You can sell the leaves.
Them, bundling the pink ones or the purple ones or the blue ones and selling those and introducing that into your local market.
And as long as you leave the crown of the plant and leave enough leaves for it to survive the winter, it'll survive and then produce seeds the next year. And same with the okra. You can remove, a third or even probably 2/3 of the pods, or even all of the pods but one, and end up with seeds as well. So it's really both. But some people will grow it for food and won't save the seeds. We know that, and that's fine. They're going to enjoy all that diversity, and some people are going to save it and adapt it and move it on. And we just we need to get these seeds out there into people's hands and trust that some percentage of them are gonna keep working with it, keep playing with it.
And so that collard seed is available in Milwaukee. Is that?
It is.
Yes.
That seed will be available. It'll be available. Actually, we're gonna Hassan, Bonita's husband, is setting up in at the entrance to the keynote in the wellness center now. So Ira is deeply involved in Ujamaa and is the godmother of Ujamaa, really.
Yeah, one of the founding grandmas.
And really,
Four grandmothers originally started this because who cares if children starve more than grannies, right? It's our responsibility to take care of our family. You had a question?
When you mentioned the biennial topic, that was a question that I had. You mentioned saving seeds of annuals,
yeah,
saving seeds of perennials, but I know from my own experience, saving seeds of biennials can be a lot more challenging.
Absolutely.
Especially anything that requires some kind of specialized storage between season 1 and season 2.
Right.
So I was wondering, are you saving seed of any of those kinds of crops, especially things like cabbages, for example, or root vegetables that might require some kind
Oh
of
yeah,
winter
we'll
storage?
save seeds for
Definitely.
anything. Now we have a project, a trial going on with Canada, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, in which they are trying to get a seed crop. So many of them are growing in greenhouses. There's a group of high school kids in Madison, Wisconsin, that have been able to successfully get a collard crop. So as we begin to introduce these projects, we hope that people will try to join us, try to work with us. We have the Heirloom Collard Project. We will have video and online workshops. So you'll be able to reach those off the Heirloom Collard Project. So we're working on a project with Ira, Chris Smith, and a whole bunch of other do-gooders that are out there trying to save and reteach this lost art.
And there are, there are a lot of methods for saving biennials in in colder climates like this. You don't need a root cellar. If you have a basement and a bucket of sand, you can keep carrots alive all winter,
Yes,
or things like.
and sweet
Old
potato.
Sturbridge Village.
Oh,
where
yeah.
We maintain historically significant varieties.
Oh, that's
of
great.
Things like beets and carrots.
Right.
And then, part of, what's advantageous for us to have a large network is if we have ones that are really challenging, we send them to a grower in Alabama where they can grow it all winter in the ground and not worry about that. But I have colleagues who are in Minnesota who are growing these, and they'll get they'll get like a refrigerated trailer to keep things at a set temperature. They heat it in the winter to keep it at 55 degrees. They have, all you need are a few small pieces of technology to keep that going. And yeah, that is an important question.
One of the things we were looking for when you talk about selecting crops for desirable qualities was to find vegetable varieties that would store without extraordinary needs, that would store for a long enough period of time that you would then have vegetables through the spring. So we would always select the vegetables that stored the best and the longest for the upcoming year of season.
Exactly, and that's plant breeding. Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's
it's
it's
and you can
critical.
do it without splicing some genes under a microscope.
Right.
Also, some amazing growers. We have a grower who's been doing this work for many years, and she realized that sweet potatoes were perennial tropicals. And so with the same technologies we use for growing sweet potatoes here, she was able to understand that we could use that to grow our ginger, to grow all our turmeric and all the cassava and all the root crops.
Taro.
So taro, all those wonderful, delicious things
And-
that we can have available by simply using some strategies to turn those into annuals by putting those plants into really hibernation is what we're doing.
And I was going to make one more point on your question there. The more you learn about the biodiversity that exists out there, the more you realize that there are workarounds for that. If you really love chard, there are actually annual varieties of chard that come from places like Palestine, Iraq, Syria, that are adapted for a single growth season. So I have real trouble growing chard for a seed crop because we have a pest called a blister beetle that weakens the plant so much that they can't survive through the winter. But if I go, the blister beetle damages these annual ones, but not in time, not before they set a nice crop of seed. Likewise, there's a species of cabbage, Brassica carinata from Ethiopia, also called Ethiopian kale, that's also an annual. It looks just like a collard, but it grows in a single season. You get a seed
Delicious.
crop and it's fantastic.
It's
So
called
there's
Texel.
definitely
Yeah,
workarounds. And
really
sometimes for
delicious.
something like that, you're growing something from a climate completely different, but that ends up being the best thing to grow in Maine or Quebec.
What
You
about
never
the
know.
zone 4 peppers? We found peppers that can be perennial in zone 4.
We
Is
gotta
that
talk
where we
about
are
that.
now?
I don't know.
We're
Fine.
fine. Okay. So
Awesome.
as people begin
We
to
gotta
really
stop.
experiment around, we can get there. And I think that's it, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, we need to wrap up. We didn't get to soil amendments, but remember, if you're in Massachusetts, the NOFA Mass bulk order is due by January 31st. So check that out on their website. And I think there's some hands-on things people can do up here and continue. The
If you want to meet some
conversation.
sorghum and take a few sorghum seeds home, we can do that. I think I might have to hang on to most of these squash seeds because it doesn't look like there's a ton in there, but we'll see.
But we have Della sorghum.
But come
which is
smell it at
delicious.
least.
We can give you Della sorghum.
Thanks,
and they'll
everybody
probably be over
online.
there.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome to
Dave.
take sorghum.
Thank you.